Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is the preview video for the Efe Ajagba vs Jonnie Rice fight, which is taking place in the Top Rank bubble this weekend. For me, this is actually an interesting test for Efe Ajagba, who's currently 13-0. And I know that there have been some fans who have cooled on Ajagba after a few recent performances, but I'm actually sort of optimistic. He's been heading in the right direction. We've been seeing improvement. He's been actually developing a few new wrinkles to his game. In this fight, it's another opportunity. It's a right fight at the right time sort of situation, because Rice, while he's a decent heavyweight, he will give Ajagba a very good test. I think that he is still a guy that Efe Ajagba, if he's going anywhere in the heavyweight division towards a title shot, that he should beat Rice. But this could well be a very, very interesting and sometimes awkward fight for Efe Ajagba. And this is why I like the test of Jonathan Rice, Jonnie Rice as he goes by these days. He's got a record of 13-5-1, but don't let that fool you, because he's actually very talented. For a guy who is weighing somewhere around 260 pounds and sometimes even heavier, like 280 odd the last time out against Dempsey McKean, he moves very well. He's got good skills and he's got a good right hand, and depending on the opponent, he does mix up the way that he fights. And I think this is going to be a key for him and his chances in this fight, because I believe he'll be on the move. I think he will be looking to exploit some potential defensive frailties and weaknesses in Efe Ajagba, but we'll come to that. But first, I'll just sort of take a step back, because you have Efe Ajagba. This is his first fight under his new Top Rank deal. So he left the PBC behind. He's overhauled his setup, new trainer, new advisor, new everything, and he's stepping into his new deal. First fight, it's going to be in the bubble, no fans. It's also going to be the first fight since March. He fought Vankajanu at the start of March, and it's the longest break as a pro that he's had. So 6 months, the longest break in his, albeit somewhat short career. It's about 3.5 years old at this point. But, 13-0, we can ask the questions. Will he be a bit rusty heading into this? Will there be any effects from, obviously, the inactivity? But coming into this, he's got a new team, James Prince as his advisor, new trainer Kay Karoma, and obviously we'll be looking at this new pairing of trainer and fighter and asking the question, what sort of improvements can we expect? What are we going to see? Because they've spoken about things like better defense, in particular head movement, because often Ajagba, he can sort of be there just as a stationary target, and there's zero head movement. But I do think we have seen Ajagba is a willing student, and in recent fights he has been getting better in certain elements of his game. And in the Vankajanu fight earlier this year, I do think that he was moving his head a little bit more, especially earlier in the fight. It might have sort of disappeared a little bit later in the fight, but he was mixing up his punches. He was doing a few different things, and he is a guy that seemingly is coachable. And for one of the sort of better prospects in the heavyweight division, and he still is, despite obviously some of the hype coming back a bit, this guy is still got a lot of potential. He's showing that he can learn and develop, and he wants to get better. He's not set in his ways so much that he isn't willing to take anything on board. He is showing that he's slowly improving. Maybe he's a bit rawer than some people would like, but another year or two of development, he can certainly still be in some very good fights in the heavyweight division and turn his attention eventually to contending for a title. And some people, sure, they've written him off because he got dropped by Iago Kaladze, a defensive lapse, saw him hit the canvas. He had a fight with Ali Aaron Demirezhian where it was a competitive fight. Ajagba won the decision. It was relatively comfortable in the end, but he didn't get Demirezhian out of there, and obviously he took a number of shots in there, although he wasn't seriously hurt or anything like that. But those performances, some people have kind of got off the hype train, and I've sort of said, how good is this guy really? But going back to what I was sort of saying at the start of the video, those were, for me, at least the right fights at the right time. They were good tests, but he was able to do enough to get through them, win those fights, and he did actually take something from them. And because he wasn't invincible, he was, getting clipped with a few shots and even found himself on the seat of his pants on the canvas. He's been able to, get back in the gym, put some things into action and develop. And that was obviously under Ronnie Shields, and now he is with Kei Karoma. So this is the first fight between the pair. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has been working on, and if he is going to be maybe a bit more fluid. Sometimes he can be a bit stiff, a bit upright. Sometimes those feet look a little bit flat and the footwork's not great. And the defensive acumen, sometimes it's not great. But obviously, one of the things with Ajagba that made him one of the best prospects in the division is his power. He's got a great 1-2, good jab, good engine. There still is a lot to like about Efe Ajagba, and if he can slowly minimize some of the flaws in his game, he's going to go from strength to strength and step through the bigger and better fights eventually. But for me, this is a good test, because if we switch to Jonathan Rice, it was a record of 13, 5, and 1. He's actually a very solid fighter, good skills. Don't let that record fool you, because he has actually fought some very good names in the heavyweight division, actually some of the other up-and-coming best prospects. Obviously, those include Arslanbek Makhmudov and Tony Yoka. But I think the way that Rice should approach this fight, and this is just obviously having seen Ajagba before, who will fancy if a guy is standing right in front of him, he will want to try to just blast him out of there. But we haven't seen sort of really tested with a whole lot of movement. But a guy like Iago Kaladze, who showed a little bit of movement, sometimes that did give actually a few problems to Ajagba. And Razvan Kajanu, even though he can be somewhat stationary at times, you know, he actually does have some decent skills when he wants to throw punches and slip a few and actually show his ability. He just doesn't throw enough punches and show his skills enough. And there were a few moments where you sort of thought, actually, you know, maybe Ajagba could have done better in those situations, because he was getting clipped with a few shots that he probably should have avoided. So it's not like he's some sort of defensive maestro who will be able to get out of the way of all sorts of punches. And Rice is a good boxer with some good skills and good movement, and he has a decent right hand. So I think we could see, especially if he comes in at a good weight, somewhere, for him at least, around 260, he will be on his bicycle, utilizing the ring and making Ajagba work, trying to get Ajagba to cut off the ring, something we really haven't seen a lot of from Efe Ajagba to any real extent. And I think he will be looking to pot shot Ajagba from the outside, utilizing movement, circling away from that power hand, and I think he will be looking to really pick off Ajagba and try to steal rounds here through activity. And I could actually see him having some success, but some of it as well, because remembering Rice is also coming off a bit of a break here with the pandemic. What's his gas tank going to be like? Because he did fade in the McKean fight, and that was obviously pre-pandemic. So there is an argument to say that Rice could be boxing well early, picking up some rounds and being in competitive rounds with Ajagba, being in the fight, and maybe he could tire, and that will let Ajagba back into it. So maybe this sort of fight will play out something like that. But I think most would be expecting that Efe Ajagba should actually win here. And if he doesn't win, well, obviously that's going to be a disaster for him in his top-ranked deal and the sort of plans and aspirations that they do have for him in the heavyweight division. But I think this is actually good matchmaking. It's a solid test, and if he gets past it, obviously he can continue developing and on to the next test, a slight step up from here. But Jonnie Rice is a hard out for anyone. So don't be surprised if you actually see Rice looking good and winning some rounds there, and actually making Ajagba work for the win, just work in general, and maybe at times making him, you know, not look so great. And I'm sure even if Ajagba wins the fight and Rice gives him some awkward moments and gives him something to think about, and maybe he doesn't look fantastic in there, some people will be saying, look, Ajagba, he's never going anywhere in the division. I've seen a lot of that since his last couple of fights. But I think you've just got to give the guy a bit more time. He's 13 fights deep. Where do people expect him to be? Because he's clearly needing more development fights. He's not ready for, you know, the tough top-end contender level fights in the division. He is a guy, I think you just have to let him, you know, have a bit more seasoning. Let him breathe and let him get that sort of experience under his belt. So, yeah, I guess with some of these top prospects, not everyone's always going to be happy, but I'm actually expecting quite a good fight. I think this is a decent test. And if Ajagba does manage to roll through Jonnie Rice in quite good fashion and he looks dominant, well, obviously his stock will go up and people will probably look at the performance and go, well, he is improving. But I think Rice is going to be in this. He is going to, be awkward. He's not going to make it easy for Ajagba. And actually, that's the sort of test that you sort of want Ajagba to be in, because you're not always going to get the perfect style matchup that suits you. So I think this fight, if we see Rice on the move, he's in good shape, got a good gas tank, it's going to be interesting. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.